They called it a dust world on the survey charts, Arcus 9, amber, and unpromising. Its atmosphere a thin soup of argon, oxygen, and a dozen trace gases that fogged the horizon like old glass. The planet turned slowly beneath a dim K-type sun, catching light in a way that made the crystalline forests look alive. Every gust of wind sent ripples of color through the mineral trees, a shivering scale from citrine to bruised violet. It was beautiful if you liked your beauty laced with hazard warnings. Dr. Yara Kellen set her gloved palm against the viewport and watched the forest shudder. She had been awake for 30 hours, which in her line of work counted as optimism. The UFS Prospector, an unarmed survey cutter, refit into something like a mobile lab, purred around her. Content in a way only well-tuned ships could be. Beneath the hull, the planet's magnetosphere sang in the sensor boards as a low, rural buzz. Yara closed her eyes and listened until the buzz and the ship's life support became the same sound. "Final approach," said Jay Sorlow, the pilot, who made flying look like Lasley scrawling a signature. "Vector 3-1 to the canyon. Crosswinds are a brat. Keep it steady," Yara murmured. "Those crystal rays shear if you look at them wrong." "We do not use the verb look for mechanical failure," said Morrow, the ship's synthetic systems liaison. Its voice was everywhere and nowhere, modulated to be friendly without assuming a gender. "We use predict and prevent." "Sure," Jace said. "Predict me a clean landing." Prediction: 88% chance of a clean landing, 12% chance of a very expensive insurance conversation. Yara smiled despite herself. "Everyone to stations." Sato, checklist. Chief Ela Sato, head of Security Union Marine by posture. Botanist by hobby, stood from her jump seat and snapped her harness tight. "Air mix is breathable with filters. Ground temps -4 to +9 Celsius. Surface radiation nominal. Microbial life, yes. Macro life, unconfirmed. Movement in the crystal stands as wind, not the kind with teeth. I'll be carrying short range and a comm voice." "Good," said Yara. "We want to leave no impressions except footprints and all." The prospector dropped into the canyon and settled on a platform of fused glass, a mesa carved by ancient lightning strikes. The skids touched, the hiss of repressurization met the soft pop of helmet's ceiling, and then the ramp went down. Cold air curled inside, metallic with a faint pepper bite that reminded Yara of the old labs on Kiner Station, ozone and grit. And every hint of discovery. She was first to step onto Arcus 9. The ground crunched, not like snow but like stale sugar. Above, crystalline spires twisted up from the canyon floor, hexagonal prisms stacked in spirals, each facet reflecting the pale sun. The spires pulsed faintly, almost inaudible. When the wind pushed through, the whole forest became a choir. The pitch changed with direction and speed. "Acoustic piezoelectricity," Yara said. "Recording automatically. Sound is a byproduct of stress release. We should listen for anomalies. Everything here is an anomaly," Jay said. He knelt, took a scraping of the ground. Meteoric silicates fused with native carbonates. "This used to be sea floor." "It was," Morrow said in her ear. "Seismic readings indicate old basin structures beneath the canyon. The planet lost most of its water between 50 and 80,000 years ago. Cause unknown. Unknown is why we're here," Yara said softly. The team spread out by practiced habit. Sato trailed Yara at a respectful distance, scanning with a palm-sized LiDAR. Jace and Anwar Selk, quartermaster and improvised geochemist, set up a tripod for the atmospheric spectrometer. Ensign Pyra Voss, young enough to still be thrilled by firsts, darted from one glimmering formation to another, feeding Morrow data, asking the ship for permission like a child asking for an extra story at bedtime. The canyon exhaled and sang. They found the first sign an hour later. Not a footprint, not claw marks. Nothing as obvious as a skeleton. "It was a shadow," Doc, Sato said, crouching by a crystal trunk. "Look at the growth lines," Yara came. Towering above them, the trunk was transparent enough to see the history trapped inside bubbles. Inclusions, fractures, each a page of the planet's past. Sato pointed at a band of smoky gray that crossed the spiral like a bruise. "Periodic stress," Yara said. "Maybe seasonal wind cycles." "Now here," Sato said, and tapped a place where the band narrowed to a razor slice. as if something had blocked the wind from a precise angle again and again. The slice repeated at regular heights, a meter, then 2, then 3. A blind, Sato said, made by something that learned the wind and hid behind its own dead. Yara felt the catch in her chest that meant she was about to argue, and then did not. We catalog and keep moving. They cataloged. They moved. Morrow pushed data into her retinal feed mineral compositions that shouldn't coexist. Isotope ratios that belonged on wetter worlds. A scatter of carbon signatures that might be old roots or might be something else. The canyon narrowed, shouldering them between spires that hummed low and unsettling. In the tightest place, Voss's boot scuffed a ridge of fused glass. It broke with a hollow sound. They all froze. Sato went down on one knee. The motion as fluid as poetry. She brushed away shards. Beneath was a tunnel no wider than a human torso, skin smooth as ice, carved through the glassy substrate like a vein. Thermal bore? Anwar said. Not natural, Sato said. She held her glove a centimeter above the surface. Warm, not much. Something used this recently. Something intelligent, Yara said before she could help herself. The tunnel sloped away, curving with a geometry that made her think of the way light curved in water, or instinctive. Sato countered. You've seen beetles bore straight lines by following emanations. Let's not marry the word intelligent yet. Morrow said, very gently. I am getting weak returns ahead. Organic volatiles. Protein fragments. The pattern matches a family of proteins sometimes found in extinct metafauna from the Alchedon drift. Yara's heart did whatever hearts do when a rumor becomes proof. She swallowed. The Alchedon drift, the Velrin. She did not say the name. Names had gravity. They bent missions into myths. We proceed, she said instead. Cables out, mapping sensors every 10 meters. No one goes more than 2 nodes without a visual on the person behind. They entered the bore. The sound changed first. The shy choir of the crystal forest fell away, and something else rose, a half-felt thrum, like a rotary engine buried in her bones. The tunnel widened and narrowed with organic logic, curving, never quite straight. Where it opened into small chambers, the walls carried striations, not scratch marks, but flow patterns in the melted glass, as if heat had been poured along planned paths. Not a collapse, Anwar whispered. More to himself than to them. This is engineered. Engineered implies engineers, Sato said, but her voice was softer. They found bones in the 3rd chamber. Small bones, bird delicate and old enough to have turned the color of tea. Voss crouched over them like a penitent. Avian? She asked. Not on a world with this gravity and this atmospheric density, Yara said. She ran her scanner over the remains and watched the graph bloom. Hollow struts, internal bracing, a marvel of efficient design that had nothing to do with birds. Skeletal pneumatization without flight. Exo-attachment points along the ridge. Whatever this was, it carried load. It was built to take force, and to give it, Sato said, touching a groove in the floor. We've got drag marks. Something heavy pulled again and again. Through here. Slate sled. Carcass. Yara found herself speaking as if in lecture. A tendency that had annoyed lovers and soothed students. On Kiner Station, in the old archives, there are fragments of pre-Union star charts. Marginal notes about a predator that moved through glass as we move through air. Velrin is one name. Star cutters another. Hunters that selected for heat tolerance, bone density. Cognitive maps that could hold 3 dimensions without anchors. You don't believe in myths, Jay said lightly, but he did not look away from the tunnel that sloped even deeper. I believe in convergences, Yara said. Evolution loves an efficient story. It was in the 6th chamber a bowl whose ceiling turned the crew's headlamps into a bouquet. That they heard the sound. Not the thrum, not their own breathing, not the whisper of filters. A whimper, soft, raw, animal, the kind of sound that lights ancient circuits in the human spine. Sato's hand went up. 6 bodies stopped in the same instant. The whimper came again, a little stronger, then cut off. Yara felt her own body go very still, the way it had when an airlock had refused to cycle on a rickety outstation in the Rook Belt. She looked at Sato. Sato looked at her and nodded once. Forward, Yara said, painfully soft. But remember, anything that whimpers can bite? The tunnel narrowed into a throat of glass and then opened into an oval den. The floor was not glass at all, but a mat of something fibrous and dark, a kind of mineral-laced felt. The air held a musk so deep Yara tasted it, a coppery undertone, like hot coins. At the center of the mat, curled into itself, was a cub. Her mind tried to fit the word around it and failed. And then, because language is a stubborn animal, made do. The cub was roughly the size of a Terran wolf pup, but longer, with a torso built of sliding plates under dense fur that looked black until light hit, and broke into oil-slick greens. For limbs, each ending in splayed digits with keratin blades that lay flat until a flex teased them up. A head shaped like no predator she knew, jaws that hinged farther than seemed possible, eyes large and set forward, each iris a ringed gold that narrowed into a vertical slit when her lamp passed. Along its spine, 6 luminal pits, flecks that caught light in the way the crystals above did. A technology worn as biology, or the other way around. The cub stared at them, not cowering, not bold. It weighed them. Yara realized she had been holding her breath. She let it go in a slow stream. Her scanner hummed and sent her numbers that felt obscene to read at a moment like this. Elevated glucose, mild dehydration, minor tissue damage at flank healed, metabolic rate, wrong, to slow for stress, or to controlled. Dr. Kellen, Morrow said in her ear, very quiet, as if whispering to her through a cathedral. Genetic sampling through spectral backscatter is consistent with known Velrin markers, 96.8% confidence. Mitochondrial scaffolding matches the Alchedone archives to within 3 standard deviations. Voss made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. Jace whispered something in his native backdock idiom, which Yara knew by heart, but did not translate, because somehow this was not a moment for backdock language. Exuberant and profane as it was, Sato kept her rifle aimed at the floor. Any sign of adults? She asked. No heat signatures above background, Morrow said. No motion outside your own. The bore's thermal traces are decayed past habitual levels. If there were adults here recently, they are gone. Gone or hiding, Sato said. To the team, keep your heads on swivels. Kellen, how do you want to proceed? Yara lowered herself to a crouch slowly, until she was at eye level with the cub. She had done this with skittish life on a dozen worlds lured with sugar water, with warmth, with songs. The cub watched her the way very young infants watch without the filter of fear. With the whole state of attention. We have protocols, Anwar said, voice a notch to high. Containment before contact. Live samples in isolation. Weaken it's a child, Voss blurted, then flushed under Sato's cool glance. It's an apex. Sato countered gently. It's both. Yara unlatched the small hydration bulb from her belt and set it on the mat. Not within reach, no predator should feel temptation in the first minute, but visible. The cub's eyes flicked to it and back. It made that sound again, soft and raw. Whimper, yes, but also a kind of question. Do you know what we are? Yara asked, then felt foolish and human. Of course you don't. The cub cocked its head. One of the luminal pits along its spine pulsed, just once, as if catching something she could not hear. Around Yara, the others shifted imperceptibly. Humans were nothing if not animals teaching themselves manners, Dr. Kellen, Morrow said, with that careful neutrality synthetics used when they were about to say something bad. We have a ping. Define ping, Sato said. A remote handshake attempt on the prospector's external systems, Morrow said. Low power. Civilian handshake, masked as Union traffic. Source, uncertain. Could be an orbital relay. Could be a ship behind the dark side of the primary moon. Attempt failed. Second attempt underway. Jay swore in a language Yara did translate in her head this time, because fear didn't respect propriety. We've been shadowed since we lit up the orbitals, he said. I told you the canyon isn't quiet. Yara's mind split neatly into 2 clean lines, child and war. She had lived long enough in the Union to know how those lines intersected. She lifted the hydration bulb, pressed the nipple to a pad on her glove, released a single drop into the air. Surface tension made it a jewel. Gently as making a wish, she set it by the cub's mouth. It sniffed. It took the bulb with 2 precise forepaws, turned it, bit the nipple once, and drank. Yara exhaled. something in her ribcage that had been locked for 50 hours or maybe 50 years unclasped. "Containment cradle," she said. "We do this right. Sato, if there's even a whisper of an adult, we abort, but I don't think there is. Morrow, I need a cold corridor to lab to. Jace, warm the engines. Anwar, bring the folate gel and the soft restraints, not the hard ones. Voss, you're on comfort. Talk, breathe, be present. That's your whole job." Voss nodded hard enough her helmet bumped her collar. "Present. Got it." Sato did not move at first. Yara could feel her thinking like a field of ice, measuring every crack. Sato had held doors against things that wanted in, and held lines against things that wanted out. She would not let sentiment do the killing. Finally, she said, "We take it, we broadcast. We broadcast, we bring wolves. We bring wolves no matter what," Yara said, softly enough that only Sato would hear. "They're already at the door." Sato's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile or might have been the last peaceful movement. "Before a storm. Then let's not be slow." They worked with the ritual precision of people who knew how quickly expertise turns to panic. The containment cradle unfolded from its sterile packet like a promise's kept clear walls. Soft sealed gel that would imprint on a range of known dermal structures. Nutritional ports that could be swapped for chewers or sippers. Yara lined it with a square of her own thermal blanket, because every young thing she had ever met wanted heart warmth. Voss talked, a babble about the star they had passed, and the way the light had threaded through the prospectors. Aft fins, as if the cub cared or as if she could convince herself it did. When Yara lifted the cub partnered the lift, supporting the plates along the ribcage so they did not flex wrong it tensed. Every fiber a drawn bow. The luminal pits along its spine pulsed in a cascade, and the humming outside the den rose as if the whole forest had leaned in to see. The cub looked at Yara, not away, and Yara felt the electric moss of eye contact that living things share. When neither is quite willing to be the first to break, "It's all right," Yara said in her fieldwork voice, the one she had used for storm-battered seabirds and scrap heap cats and once a miner, who would not let go of the rock that had crushed him. "We are leaving. You are not alone." The cub did not understand the words, but something in her cadence smoothed it. It exhaled. It let Yara settle it into the cradle. "Morrow?" Yara said. "Corridor ready," Morrow said. And Dr. Kellen to more handshake attempts. "The mask is Syndicate Clan's code. Poorly done. The carrier piggybacks a hierarch dominion him. I do not know whether to be amused or worried." "Both," Sato said. "We walk." They walked. The den fell behind them. The tunnel throat. The bowl of light. The bore shivering with old heat. At the third chamber, the prospector's calms went from a murmur to a blade. "Unidentified vessel." A new voice said on open band, all charm polished like coins. "This is Clan's courier rolled bone. We noted your distress beacon. We didn't send one." Jace muttered, "It might be about to be distressed." The voice continued cheerfully. "We are here to assist. Please transmit cargo manifest for humanitarian review." Sato's eyes went flat. "They know. They suspect," Yara corrected. "They always suspect. That's the whole syndicate ethos." Dr. Kellen, Morrow said. "I am also detecting a narrowband chant on hierarchy frequencies." Translation, loose, all hunts return to the altar. The Dominion may be farther than the clans, but they sing louder. They reach the ramp. The canyon air hit Yara's faceplate like a cold hand. The prospector knelt patient and ready, her belly warm, her engines coughing to life as Jace pre-spooled them. Above, the sky had gone from amber to a darker honey Arcus 9's slow dusk. Rising with it, 3 precise points of light that were not stars. "Bored," Sato said. Now, Yara carried the cradle like a reliquary. The cub stared up past her at the sky and made a sound that was not a whimper this time. If she had to call it something, she'd call it sadness, but that put too much human on it. Perhaps it was simply a note in the music of a creature that knew itself alone and was suddenly not. Inside, Lab 2 had been warmed by Morrow's anticipatory kindness. Sensors unfurled like white flowers, calibrating. Voss knelt by the cradle, breath fogging her visor. "Hi," she said, as if meeting a neighbor. "Hi there. Seal the bay," Sato said. "Jace, get us to high orbit. Morrow, spin the Union codes and pray to the gods you don't believe in." I am sufficient without prayer, Morrow said. But it launched the Union emergency handshake anyway. Full power this time. Bright enough to be seen by any cruiser in 3 systems. Distress beacon sent. Yara stood beside the cradle and let herself, finally, speak the name. Valrin, she whispered. The word landed in the room and seemed to rearrange the furniture. The cub blinked. One of the luminal pits along its spine flared with a violet edge, and then pulsed down to gold. Above, the prospector's hull trembled with the first soft press of a targeting scan. The war had not yet begun, but in the quiet of Lab 2, while the ship, the UFS Prospector, had never been meant for combat. It was a survey cutter at heart, good engines, excellent sensors, and paper-thin plating designed to shrug off dust storms and micrometeoroids. Against pirates, syndicate raiders, or Dominion zealots, it was a firefly and a thunderstorm. And yet it was climbing. Engines burned blue-white as Jace coaxed every scrap of thrust from them. The amber atmosphere thickened into a veil of copper fog, then thinned to nothing. Stars sharpening against the void. The ship carried 7 crew, a cub in a cradle, and the weight of a secret already too heavy for any vessel to bear. Trajectory locked, Jace said. Voice tight. High orbit in 12 minutes, if no one takes a bite out of us first. Someone will take a bite, Sato muttered. She stood in the command alcove, rifle magnetized to her back. Helmet off now but jaw set like armor. 3 signals on approach vector. Syndicate ID squawks, but one's falsified. And that chant Morrow picked up, it's growing louder. They're broadcasting it wideband now. Dominion ships don't sneak, they sermonize, Yara said. Her hands still pressed against the cub's cradle. The creature was quiet, but its golden eyes tracked her every movement, and sometimes the air itself seemed to ripple faintly round it, as if it was dreaming out loud. Morrow's voice rolled through the deck speakers, calm, polished, confirming. 3 vessels inbound. The rolled bone is Syndicate, class light cruiser. The falsified squawk, peeling away now. Correction, it is a Syndicate corvette. Designation Black Kiss, minimal armor, optimized for boarding. The Dominion signature is a frigate, identified as Sanctifier's due, heavier plating, no mercy codes transmitted. So, Enwar said, too dry to be casual, too shaky to be calm. 2 pirates and a zealot priest, and us. Wonderful odds, we're not fighting them, Yara said. We're running. Signal Union command again. Someone has to be close enough to hear us. Morrow's pause was infinitesimal, but Yara felt it. Transmission confirmed. Signal strength degraded. Atmospheric scattering from Arcus 9's crystal forests appears to disrupt subspace coherence. Message will take time. How much time? Jace asked. Longer than you want. Morrow said gently. The first hail came before they even cleared the gravity well. Unidentified vessel. A voice drawled over wideband. Male, jovial. Practiced in charm that had teeth behind it. This is the rolled bone. You appear to be carrying unauthorized biological cargo. No need to panic. Just hand it over and we'll see to its safety. We're professionals. Professionals at what? Sato muttered. Slavery, Anwar said. Genetic theft, Yara added. Extortion. Murder. Piracy, pick your poison. Sato finished. The cub stirred at the voices, ears flicking in ways that looked too deliberate for instinct. Its luminal pits pulsed, violet faintly bleeding into gold. Yara stroked the side of the cradle. Though she knew it wasn't for comfort alone, it was also for the recorder. Every action, every response, was data. This is Dr. Yara Kellen of the Union of Free Systems Science Corps, Yara said, activating the outbound channel. She kept her tone professional, crisp. We are on a sanctioned expedition. No unauthorized biological material aboard. Cease shadowing us and clear a path. Laughter came back, warm as spilled oil. Doc, don't insult me. Your transponder's screaming emergency codes. Your engines are running like they're afraid. And my scans tell me your hold's carrying a heat signature that doesn't belong to any of your crew. You found something, and it's worth more than your lives. Let us relieve you of that burden. Voss whispered, horrified. She was barely past 20 cycles, and though she wore her Union patch proudly, she still had the eyes of someone who thought rules mattered. It's a child. They don't see children. Sato said flatly. They see weapons. The Black Kiss broke formation first. Smaller, faster. Its profile bloomed on Morrow's tactical overlay, needle hull bristling, with grappling emitters. And ion cannons, designed to punch holes in shields, cripple engines, and deliver boarders like venom into a bloodstream. They're moving to intercept, Morrow confirmed. Boarding trajectory in for minutes. Jace, Sato snapped. On it, Jace said. The prospector bucked as he spun her nose, engines screaming. The little ship darted sideways, plunging back into the upper atmosphere. Plasma licked her hull as she skimmed the planet's edge, trading altitude for speed. The Syndicate corvette followed. The Cub cried out short, sharp, almost angry. The sound cut through the deck like a blade, and for an instant every display flickered. Morrow's voice dropped into a lower register. Not a malfunction. The creature produced a resonance. Frequency. Destabilized my auxiliary channels. Dr. Kellen, it may be interacting with our systems. Yara's pulse leapt. Not intentionally. It's frightened. Like a child screaming and shattering glassware. Intentional or not, Sato said. It could kill us as easily as save us, which is why it cannot fall into Syndicate hands. Yara said, fierce now. Do you know what they do with it? How many black labs would carve it open to make soldiers? Sato met her eyes, hard, steady. I know. Which is why I'm telling you, if capture becomes certain, we don't let them have it, no matter the cost. Yara wanted to argue, but the weight of truth pressed her tongue flat. The first shot came when they were still burning along the edge of atmosphere. The Black Kiss spat a bolt of blue-white ion fire. It wasn't meant to kill, only to cripple. It slammed into the prospector's flank, rippling her plating like struck water. Consoles flared. Voss yelped, shields are gone. Jace shouted, we don't have shields. Another bolt screamed past. Evasive, Sato ordered. I'm already dancing. Jace snapped, throwing the prospector into a brutal roll that made the hull shriek. Morrow's calm voice cut through the chaos. Warning, rolled bone is charging main guns. Estimated impact, 108 seconds. Suggestions? Yara demanded. Die quickly, Anwar muttered. Or, Morrow said smoothly, we exploit gravity. The canyon where you discovered the specimen remains beneath us. Depth sufficient to confuse targeting systems. We dive. Jace said. Dive, Sato ordered. The prospector plunged. Amber mist swallowed her as she tore back into the canyon. Lightning sparked between crystal spires, wild and dangerous. The ship's belly scraped atmosphere, trailing fire. Behind them, the Black Kiss followed, reckless, hungry. The Dominion frigate's chant filled comms now. A low dirge of inevitability. All hunts return to the altar. All prey must be sanctified. They're not even pretending they don't know. Anwar said. They don't care, Sato replied. They'll burn the whole canyon to ash to claim a corpse. Yara whispered. The Cub whimpered again. This time the lights across the command alcove flickered in rhythm with its breath. The prospector's failing systems seemed to steady, if only for a heartbeat, as though the creature's presence was willing the ship to endure. Yara's gaze locked on the cradle. It doesn't know it's saving us, she thought. It doesn't even know what it is. Above, plasma fire carved the sky. The war had begun, not in declarations, not in councils, but in the scream of a Syndicate cannon and the cry of a frightened cub. The prospector limped through the void now, patched and scarred. The Syndicate corvette, Black Kiss, lay shattered against Arcus 9's crystalline forests, its wreckage singing like broken wind chimes in the amber mists. The Dominion frigate, Sanctifier's due, had retreated but not defeated, merely awaiting. And the Syndicate cruiser, Rolled Bone, had vanished into the dark, though Yara knew better than to believe it was gone. Predators circled until blood ran. The crew floated in an uneasy truce with silence. Consoles flickered. The air smelled faintly of melted insulation and stress sweat. But the Cub thrived. Growth in Captivitalab 2 had become its world, a sterile chamber reshaped into a nursery. The cradle had expanded as the Cub grew, its mineral fiber mat replaced with woven composites from the prospector's stores. Nutrient gels engineered from extrapolated DNA maps fed it. Hydration bulbs soothed its throat. And Yara, impossibly, found herself bonding. It had doubled in size in mere weeks. Once the size of a wolf pup, now it stretched longer than Voss's torso. Plates of living armor hardened along its ribs. Its eyes, those uncanny gold-rimmed irises, followed Yara with recognition. Not just recognition of voice or scent, but of meaning. Double quotes Dr. Kellen, Morrow reported one morning. The subject has begun to mimic crew vocalizations. Frequency traces indicate it can reproduce human phonemes. Show me. The cub sat in the cradle, head tilted, luminal pits faintly glowing. Yara crouched. Hello. The cub's mouth opened. The sound was ragged, halting, but it was unmistakable. Hell. Low. Voss squealed with delight. It talked. It mimicked. Sato corrected, though her voice was softer than usual. Mimicry isn't comprehension. But Yara, kneeling there, felt the hair rise on her arms. Because when she said, "You are safe," the cub blinked once, twice, and settled, as though it understood. The raid's safety, however, was fragile. Syndicate and Dominion both began striking outer Union colonies. Mining stations burned, trade routes were cut, entire convoys vanished. They demanded the same thing, the return of the cub. They're using it as pretext, Anwar said, voice grim over the galley table. The warlords want a genetic weapon. The hierarchs want to erase what they call a sin of nature. And now both sides are fighting the Union by proxy. All because we carried it off that planet. They would have found it anyway, Yara said. We didn't create this war. We only uncovered the spark. Sato shook her head. History doesn't care who lit the match, only who gets burned. The Union tried to keep pace. Fleets redeployed. Scientists argued over containment. Politicians argued over morality. Was the Velrin a weapon, a child, a god, or a plague? Yara received encrypted messages daily, some demanding she surrender the cub, others begging her to protect it at all costs. She ignored them all. She had no intention of giving it to anyone. The awakening had happened during a raid. The prospector had docked at Station Athema, a trade hub strung around a dying moon. Supplies were low, repairs overdue. The crew stretched their legs, walked under false gravity, tried to forget the war brewing beyond the hull. Yara stayed in Lab 2 with the cub. She had learned its moods, its small joys, how it liked the hum of a tuning fork, how it nosed at reflections, how it leaned against her when she sat nearby. Then alarms screamed. Boarding klaxons. Weapons fire. Syndicate raiders had cut through the station's weak defenses like paper. Sato's voice crackled over comms. Multiple hostiles inside. They're heading for the lab. The doors slammed. Bulkheads groaned. Yara grabbed for a shock baton, though she knew it would do little against syndicate cutters. The cub stood, hackles rising, eyes blazing molten gold. Its luminal pits flared one by one, in a rhythm too precise to be random. The first raider forced the door, plasma rifle raised dot, and then the cub roared. Not sound alone, not volume. A psychic concussion ripped through the chamber, invisible yet irresistible. Yara felt her bones vibrate, her vision splinter. The raider dropped instantly, blood streaming from his ears, eyes glassing over. Another tried to push through, collapsed mid-step. A third clawed at her helmet before she fell, lifeless. Yara staggered, clutching her skull. But the roar seemed to slide past her, wrapping around her without breaking her. As though the cub had chosen who would stand and who would fall. The silence that followed was thick, electric. The raiders lay crumpled, their weapons inert. The cub blinked at her, chest heaving, then padded closer. Yara fell to her knees. You saved me. The cub tilted its head, as if in reply. Its eyes glowed brighter, and in that moment, Yara knew beyond doubt, it was not merely an animal. It was becoming. The realization Sato arrived minutes later, weapon drawn, scanning the carnage. She froze at the sight of 3 dead raiders sprawled in the lab. What happened here? Yara whispered the truth. The cub happened. Sato's gaze shifted to the creature. It sat calmly now, tail wrapped around its plated haunches, looking as innocent as a child after a tantrum. So it's a weapon after all. No, Yara said fiercely. Not a weapon, a being. It didn't attack at random. It chose, it spared me. Do you understand what that means? It means, Sato said coldly, that if the Syndicate or Dominion gets hold of it, they won't need armies anymore. One of these grown, trained could break fleets. Yara looked at the cub, who met her eyes with steady intelligence. She thought of the myths, the star cutters, the predators that had once dominated entire sectors. And she thought of the child who had reached for a hydration bulb with such tentative trust. "They'll never have it," Yara said. The cub leaned against her, its body warm, humming faintly with power. For the first time, Yara allowed herself the dangerous thought, maybe it doesn't need us to protect it. Maybe it will protect itself. And that terrified her more than anything. By the time Yara and the prospector limped back from Station Athema, the galaxy was already alive with rumors. Traders whispered of a beast that could shatter men with a cry. Syndicate agents bragged about a living weapon destined for their warlords. Dominion priests preached of an abomination reborn, a test from their gods. Every broadcast, every coded channel, every council hall echoed with the same word, Velrin, and every faction wanted the cub. The Union convened emergency councils. Politicians thundered about morality, about sovereignty, about defense. Scientists clamored for access to the cub's data. Admirals demanded it be weaponized or destroyed. And through it all, Yara resisted. "It is not a specimen," she told them, her voice raw from endless transmissions. "It is not a weapon. It is a child. If we treat it as a prize, then yes, the war will consume us. But if we recognize it as sovereign, as a people in its own right," her words were drowned out by shouting. The fleets were already on the move. Flight into the Force Prospector became a hunted vessel. Syndicate cruisers and Dominion frigates clashed openly in border systems, each claiming they were chasing Union thieves. Yara's small ship slipped through the chaos, but she knew the net was closing. Sato argued for turning the cub over to Union High Command, if only to protect the crew. "They'll hide it deeper than we can. We can't fight everyone, Yara." But Yara shook her head. "High Command will fracture. Half will want to weaponize it, half to dissect it. The cub will be torn apart by politics before it ever sees adulthood." Jace snorted from the helm. "So what's the plan? We keep running until somebody bigger shoots us down?" Yara looked at the cub, now the size of a lion, plates of armor gleaming under the lab lights. It met her gaze with a patience that unsettled her. She realized, suddenly, that it was waiting, not for orders, for choice. "We take it home," she said. "Back to Arcus 9. Back to the forests that birthed it. If it decides to leave, it leaves on its own terms." The crew stared at her, but none argued. Even Sato, after a long silence, nodded. "Then we'd better be ready to fight to the surface." The siege of Arcus 9. They returned to find the planet no longer quiet. 3 fleets encircled Arcus 9. Syndicate warships prowled the orbits like sharks. Dominion vessels gleamed with ritual lights, their hulls painted in scripture. And now Union destroyers had arrived too, desperate to protect the Discovery or seize it before anyone else did. The prospector descended into the storm. "Every gun in this sector is pointed at us," Jace said. "We're a candle in a hurricane." "Then burn bright," Sato growled. They weaved through fire. Plasma bursts lit the upper atmosphere. Dominion hymns thundered across comms, demanding surrender. Syndicate gunners fired wildly, eager to claim the prize. Union ships tried to blockade, but none dared fire first for fear of igniting open war. It didn't matter. War had already begun. The prospector shuddered under impacts. Hull alarms shrieked. Yet somehow, impossibly, they broke through, plunging back into the amber skies, down into the canyon forests that had first sung them welcome. The choice Yara carried the cub into the crystalline grove where they had first found it. The air was alive with color and sound, spires humming in the dusk. She set the cradle down, but the cub no longer needed it. It stepped out on its own, wings of light unfurling from its luminal pits, half energy, half biology. Dazzling, the crew stood in silence. Even Sato lowered her weapon. Yara knelt before it. "You are not ours, not mine, not theirs. You are your own. But if you stay, they will never stop hunting you. Unless you end this, here and now." The cub regarded her. Then it looked skyward, and the air shook. A psychic pulse rippled through the canyon, through the prospector, through every ship in orbit. Syndicate gunners dropped their weapons, screaming as their minds split. Dominion priests fell to their knees, blinded by visions. Union captains froze, hearing a single word in their bones: leave. The sky boiled with light as one by one, Ships broke formation, engines flaring as they fled. A few resisted the rolled bone, stubborn, vengeful. But the Cub's second pulse was sharper, merciless. The cruiser cracked in half, silent fire spilling into the void. Then silence. The war had ended not with treaties, but with a child's roar. The new era when the last echoes faded. Yara dared to breathe. The Cub turned to her, eyes molten and knowing. It touched its snout to her hand, a gesture both alien and achingly familiar. And then it leapt skyward, wings of light catching the resonance of the crystalline forest. It rose higher, higher, until it was gone. The crew stood together, watching the empty sky. Sato broke the silence. So that's it. We let it go. We didn't let it, Yara said softly. It chose. History would remember the war as madness, fleets shattered, colonies burned, millions lost. But Yara knew the truth. The war had begun over a cub, and it had ended because that cub became something greater, something sovereign, something untamed. The galaxy would learn to live under the gaze of the Velrin. And for the first time in decades, Yara allowed herself hope.